Good morning, everyone. Congrats on showing up to the first panel of BDME. You made it. I'm Jason, the CEO of Proton. Can you hear me okay? Yes, good. Louder? Louder? Closer? Okay. So I'm the CEO and director of product at Proton, which is a music distribution platform, label services company, and radio station, promo pools and whatnot. I've been doing it for 20 years, and I'm joined up here with Michael and Gavin, who help grow the labels on Proton, which are powered by Proton distribution. So today is a panel, but it's also a master class on what we have been doing at Proton regarding DJ mixes, passive income, playlists, and playlist potential on Spotify. Oops, I got this clicker here. So we're going to be talking about sort of two goals that electronic music labels care deeply about. Passive income from Spotify and Apple Music, and chances of features in official playlist. Today's panel is going to primarily focus on Spotify because it generally generates more revenue for electronic music labels than Apple. But what we're talking about is both Spotify and Apple with a focus on Spotify. Playlist placement is never really guaranteed, but wouldn't it be nice if your next release was more likely to be featured? We never like to talk about absolutes, but more about just increasing the chances. Additionally, electronic music labels and artists generally are always in need of more income to help support themselves, and also their label's growth. So wouldn't it be nice if you could reliably boost a track's passive income monthly by 10%, by 50%, by 100%, and in some cases even 700%, potentially without the label having to do much more extra work themselves. Traditionally, sometimes things like this rely on external sources. You're hoping for someone else to do this for you. You don't necessarily have the agency to take care of it yourself. So the tools and the strategies we're going to talk about today are designed to potentially give label owners and artists who are working with those labels the agency to not be at the mercy of someone else to reach these goals. For these goals, we're going to dig into two core concepts: DJ mixes on Spotify and Apple Music, and also something new that you may not know about yet called Spotify popularity scores. We're going to get into that in depth as we go further. So in general, when fans of electronic music like ours listen, they're listening to DJ mixes. But on the internet, where we mostly listen to mixes, are on platforms like SoundCloud, Mixcloud, and YouTube, where artists and labels and DJs don't really get paid much, or in some cases, at all. We're not going to go into the details of who gets paid what and how much on these platforms, but if you're in the scene and you're one of these types, you know that it's not very much. On Spotify and Apple, where artists and labels earn more per stream, the lion's share of royalties go to the major music labels. Not a surprise, but they're making millions per hour. For electronic music makers, the artists and the labels, to get a more fair share on these platforms, we need to bring DJ mixes at scale to these platforms. If that doesn't happen, the major labels are going to continue to get most of the royalties. But in 2023, today, DJs still cannot easily and directly upload mixes to these platforms. There's now a way forward with some of the technology that we're building. So you may have seen some official mixes on Spotify and Apple that are done by themselves. What's the difference between what Proton is doing and what these platforms are doing on their own? Spotify and Apple do run a few of them themselves, but they're invite only. They're only for VIPs. They're also manually managed by the Spotify and Apple teams. Not everyone can get involved. Proton's tech, on the other hand, is available to all artists and all labels, but they've chosen to power their labels' distribution with Proton. So Even though this is not available to maybe everyone in this room right now, any label that is choosing to work with Proton gets to use this. You don't have to get invited by Spotify. You don't have to get invited by Apple. You don't have to wait for their staff to get the mix ready and publish it. You can do it yourself like you might upload to SoundCloud. So we'll go through this table really quickly, very briefly. So what platforms do the mixes go to? Spotify's staff, upload it to Spotify. Apple's staff, upload it to Apple. If you do a mix with Apple, it doesn't go to Spotify. Proton's mixes go to both. Who can upload? The staff of these platforms. And on Proton, it's the artists themselves who are making the tracks. It's the label owners who are running the labels. And it's the DJs in the promo pools of these labels. So all three types of people who are, whether you're a DJ, a label owner, or an artist, can get involved without having to go through a gatekeeper at these platforms. A key thing are what songs can be played in the mixes. So on Spotify, the tracks that can be played in the mixes are from participating music labels that have signed an agreement with Spotify. It's a lot of them, but it's not necessarily all of them. On Apple, fortunately, I believe it's almost all songs on the platform. So when they invite a VIP to make a mix on Spotify, or if you're working with their team, you pretty much have carte blanche to take whatever you want and put them into your mixes, which is great. Proton's mixes are a little bit different. It's all of the songs across our distribution. So Proton has 2,000 music labels roughly that we're working with, and our mixes can include those tracks. A big factor of this, though, are do the DJs get paid? So beyond just the labels and the artists, the DJs who are making the mixes themselves, what Spotify and Apple pay or don't pay is confidential. We can't really talk about it here. If you know a DJ who has made a mix on one of these, you're welcome to ask them to learn more about it. Proton can be transparent about this, though. For our mixes, the DJs get 10% of all of the royalties that are generated in the mix for every single track in the mix. The 10% that they make does not get removed from the artist and the labels who are featured in the mix. They're getting, the 10% is coming from Proton's share as a distributor. So as a distributor, we offer share services to music labels for a commission. We lower our commission and give it to the DJs 10% for every single stream in the mix. So if the mix has 10 tracks in it and someone listens to the entire mix, they're getting 10% of every single track. Conversely, on YouTube, you upload a mix, you get nothing. SoundCloud, you upload a mix, you get nothing. The nice thing about all three of these options are that the artist and the label percentage of what you get from the royalties on the mixes is the same. Artists and labels don't earn anything less in a mix than they do from a normal unmixed stream. So if you're familiar with classic compilations like Fabric or Global Underground or any of these wonderful compilation series that a lot of us have grown up listening to over the years, this is different. Because when you listen to a compilation mix on these platforms, it's been licensed and the artist and label are earning a smaller commission. So these are basically like mixed playlists where the artists and labels are getting the same exact cut, which is very important. If you are not with Proton and you're a label wanting to do mixes, it's still possible. It's just a little bit more challenging. So you can potentially release mixes of just your own music with your music label without cross-licensing. You can potentially wait to get invited by Spotify or Apple. Or you can do what those compilation series do, which is license music from other labels. So it's still possible to do outside of Proton's platform, but every year we are doing the best we can to make it easier and easier for labels to do this. So a bit of a disclaimer. The Proton tech that we're going to discuss and that Gavin and Michael are going to talk about, all the technology that we're talking about is free, but it's only available to these situations. So if your record label is powered by Proton's distribution, if you are an artist signed to any of those music labels, or if you are a DJ able to receive promos from any of those labels. So you may not be currently in the promo pool of one of these labels right now, but if you're like, wow, I really want to get involved, you can either talk to our team or find a music label distributed by Proton and get immediately joining what's possible here just by being in the promo pool. We're always working on ways to expand it, but it's a bit challenging. So insights in today's talk are hopefully available to everyone, even if you're not on a Proton label or a Proton promo pool yet. But the tools to implement these strategies may be expensive or time-consuming or not possible unless you're on our platform. Our goal is to make today's talk insightful and empowering for everybody, and not serve as a giant ad for Proton. We mostly want to just share what we're doing and excited about, and hopefully help have you guys learn a few things to reach some of these goals. So first, a really important overview of some major perks of doing a mix on Spotify, why they're important. Everybody here should know about the famous monthly listener number on Spotify. It's at the top of every artist's profile, and it's a key factor in getting featured in official playlists. This is an important point. In a DJ mix, when people listen to it, the play of every track counts towards the monthly listeners of every artist in the mix. So if all of you guys are featured in a great DJ mix and a fan listens to it and millions of fans listen to it, the people featured in the mix have their monthly listeners go up. It's not just the monthly listeners of the DJ who made the mix. It's the remixers, it's the featured artists, it's the original artists. It's like the surface is rising for everyone who gets featured. This is a big deal because the monthly listeners factor in to the playlist consideration when you pitch your tracks. So when you get featured in a mix and your playlist, your monthly listeners go up, the next time you release music, you're that much closer to potentially getting playlist placement. So mixes are a powerful strategy for boosting your chances of official playlist support on future releases. Additionally, the way that mixes work, all three cases for Apple mixes, Spotify mixes, and Proton's mixes that go to both, when fans listen to the mix, they can see exactly which artist and track are featured in the mix. So while you're listening, you can be on track 8 and be like, wow, this track is incredible. You look down on your phone, you look at your computer, and you can see this is the artist, this is the track that's playing. You don't have to Shazam it. You can click through and follow the artist. So it's a way to boost discovery for the artists that are featured in the mixes as well. On SoundCloud and YouTube, that's a little bit, there's more friction there. It's a little bit harder to find out what song is playing. And so this, in turn, on a popular mix, can boost the followers of artists in the mix. A DJ on my label released a mix today featuring a lot of smaller artists. He's very high profile. The artists in the mix, not so high profile. It's really a good opportunity for some of those smaller artists to just gain a few more fans each time a mix comes out. So that's both the monthly listeners and the follower numbers having an impact here. So I'm gonna give a quick overview of how this sort of works at Proton. Gavin and Michael are gonna go a little bit more in depth. So artists can play tracks from any Proton label they've signed a contract with and released music on. DJs invited to a label's promo pool can play anything from that label's catalog. They can play the promos that they're getting for free. They can dive into the back catalog and play stuff from the back catalog as well. Music labels on Proton can upload mixes on their own with their own tracks, but key thing here, and this is what we'll go into a little bit more in depth shortly, is music labels can unlock their entire back catalog and be given to DJs for their mixes. Proton, once the mixes are sent to us on our platform, we send them to Apple and Spotify both, and we automatically take care of the accounting. So the artists, the labels, and the DJs all have their accounting taken care of. A key limitation to understand, though, this is sort of the main point, is in Proton's mixes for Spotify and Apple right now, DJs can only play tracks from Proton-powered labels. But over the last year or two, we've been continuously making it easier and hopefully fun for artists and DJs to work with this limitation and start their mix at the onset, understanding how it works. So Michael and Gavin are gonna show and talk about a little bit of how this works, both for self-service, for DJs doing it themselves, and also full service, where we take care of it for the DJs.
Thank you, Jason. All right, I'm going to talk about the artist and promo pool self-service flow. Self-service means that any artist that has signed tracks with labels at Proton or any DJs in the promo pool of a label at Proton can upload DJ mixes to Spotify and Apple via Proton without needing anybody's help. Unlike at Spotify and Apple, where you actually need an invitation, as Jason previously explained. So let's dive into it. At Proton, labels can invite DJs and artists to their promo pool. In this example of the promo pool of my label, Grey Bar Hotel, you can actually see how you can easily invite new DJs. It's highlighted on the right side there. So this is the view of the label when you log into Proton. Once the label has added you to their promo pool, you can accept new invites and download new tracks for free. So what you see here is actually the subscriber perspective of artists and DJs once they log into their account at Proton. When preparing to record the mix, artists and DJs can then browse the track stack to see what tracks they can additionally feature in a mix besides the promos. The track stack includes tracks that they can buy from Proton labels' back catalogs, or tracks in the promo pool that they can download for free, which you saw on the previous slide. And Proton has actually built another tool for labels to give DJs full access to their entire back catalog very easily, but Gavin is actually going to dive into that later in the talk. So let me summarize. In order to get a mix on Spotify and Apple via Proton, you record the mix with Proton tracks, you slice the mix yourself, and we actually also have a guide to help with that. You set the track list with quick search, and you upload cover art. And then you basically just schedule the release date. And slicing the mix yourself actually allows you to have precision over the cue points, which can be really nice. But it's also for some of the DJs the hardest task right now, so we're also working on new tools to make that easier. And now I'm going to hand it over to Gavin.
Thank you, Michael and Jason. So following on, I'm going to talk about our full service flow, including explaining what is archive access, one of our main tools. In full service, we take care of everything for the DJ. Hold on 1 sec. Sorry, 1 moment. Technical difficulties.
Okay, you're good. There we go.
Yeah, so in full service, we take care of everything for the DJ. DJs send their mixes through, and Proton, or the label they're doing the mix for, takes care of all the steps for them. So let's take a deeper look. So here we have an example of my own label, Meanwhile, with Proton. So a music label on Proton's platform can invite an artist to make a mix when they have an upcoming release. So you can see here highlighted, the label can give archive access to a DJ. And what that does is it grants them the temporary ability to be able to easily browse and download the entire label catalogue to use in their mixes. So it's like being able to, if you think about it, browse and preview on Beatport, but being able to download it all for free. So for a label, this is all taken care of automatically in Proton without the label having to manage a Dropbox, for example, with all their latest releases. So what you're looking at here is once an artist has full access to the label's catalogue, you can see all the releases appear that they can download. So from the top is all the latest releases, and that would run right through everything that they have released on that label. So archive access automatically expires after 30 days as well. So labels don't have to remember to turn it off. And this helps in a lot of ways give a firm deadline, which a lot of people need to actually get a mix done. So here we have our archive access and curation full flow for full service. Firstly, the label grants the archive access to the DJ, and the DJ can then browse through that back catalogue of the label. So the great thing is Proton can also help the DJ get archive access to other labels across our roster if they need more music for a mix. The DJ also can select any of their own productions that they've released on Proton labels, and also any promos from other Proton labels they are subscribed to as well. So once they've finished, the DJ sends the mix and the track list over to either Proton or the label for preparation. They also send their press shots over, and we prepare that. Proton or the label then take care of slicing the mix as well, and then the label or Proton can schedule a mix as well. So that's how it's full service. Handing back over to Jason.
Cool. So we get to talk about something new now. The mixes and what we've gone over so far is stuff over the last few months that we've already done. We're going to talk about something new that Proton has just launched that is available to everyone, not necessarily just on Proton. So this is the extra juice in a lot of the strategies that we're going to be talking about now. You're familiar with the follower numbers and monthly listeners on Spotify. This is a third number. This is an official number. This is not something that Proton has created. This is something that Spotify has in their API. It's an official metric, an official measure, official number that measures the heat an artist has across Spotify's algorithm, which powers everything on the platform. Even when you're getting pitched to curators, this score is a really good indicator of how they're sorting their sheets, perhaps, or what artists they're going to feature. So popularity scores are important because they really boost your chances of getting featured on Spotify. So over the last 20 years or 10 years that we've been working with Spotify, with 2,000 music labels on our platform and years of pitching to the curators, we discovered something interesting. The closer an artist's popularity score is to 40 or 50, Spotify is much more likely to consider placement in official playlists or just review the release that you're on. It's not a guarantee. Getting featured on Spotify is never a guarantee, but the higher the popularity score is on your release for one of the artists, the more likely the curators are going to review your music. So if you want better chances of features in official playlists, you can invite artists with higher scores to collaborate with you. So whether you're an artist trying to get a remixer, whether you're a label building a compilation, getting access to these popularity scores and using them strategically is almost one of the most reliable ways that we've found to make sure that your music is getting considered. Another big aspect of the popularity score that's important is back to the passive income. So on average, over the last 2 years or 3 years since we've been doing these mixes, we've found that a DJ mix from any DJ on average roughly will boost a track's plays by over 10%. It's currently at 11%. We've posted about 2,200 DJ mixes in the last 2 years, and on average, when the mix comes out, over time, the tracks that are featured in it will see a lift of around 11%. If you were to put money into the bank and get an 11% return on that, that would be pretty great. But when a mix is from a DJ with a popularity score closer to 20 or closer to 30, the mix is way more likely to boost plays by over 11%. We've had mixes at 700%. We've had mixes at 100%. We've had mixes at 50%. And in general, the popularity score is a really good indicator of how that's going to go. Again, not guaranteed, but helps give a label and the artists and the DJs working here more agency over their strategy and hopefully their passive income. Because a key thing to know about these mixes versus playlist placement is that mixes are always on the platform. Mixes don't go away. When you get featured in a playlist, you might be featured in the playlist for a short period of time, which is fantastic. Everyone wants to be featured in a Spotify playlist, but nothing is forever. You get taken out of the playlist, the boost is over. These mixes exist as albums on Spotify. You can't get taken out of a mix. That's why this passive income is so key, is the mix is there, it's growing in traffic, similar to how SoundCloud mixes can get momentum. A mix on Spotify can get momentum, and then you're getting monthly passive income. So inviting artists to make mixes with strong popularity scores is a nearly surefire way to significantly boost passive income over time. So the question we usually get asked next from our labels is, where do we get the popularity scores? How do we have access to this information? So in the past, labels had to either pay to access them or manually look them up one by one. They're not available on the Spotify website or in the app. They're not available in Spotify for Artists. It's available in the Spotify API. Now at Proton, labels have free, easy, and automatic access to the popularity scores of their entire artist roster, so all of the artists who have released on the label, but also the entire promo pool roster, everyone you've invited to your promo pool. This is all in one place in a giant list, which you'll see shortly, and doesn't require the label paying for access to a third-party subscriber, a third-party analytics website, and it doesn't require manually looking up each artist. So it allows you to sort and filter it and look at things in interesting ways and have a bit more agency over your strategy. So this is sort of the part of the masterclass where you get to put it all together and put in the work to grow. Spotify popularity scores give music labels the ability to reliably invest their time or money to grow passive income and the chances of getting featured. We're going to go over a few powerful, detailed strategies now that some of the top labels at Proton are using to grow sustainably and effectively. Even if you're not a label owner and you're an artist signed to some of these labels, you can think about these strategies and bring them back to your label manager. Gavin is going to talk about release strategy, how labels can integrate this into their releases and their schedule and how they work month to month and when they're preparing their releases. And Michael is going to talk about something new that we're building called label channels. So I'll give this over to Gavin now.
Thank you, Jason. Yes, so I'll be talking about the release strategy section, about different ways of applying the popularity scores and the archive access to strategies. And those include things like advances, royalty shares, and inviting DJs for a mix around the time of a release. So artists with a high popularity score may ask for an advance to collaborate on a mix, but with Proton, all the costs are recouped automatically without any extra accounting headaches. Another strategy that you could use is to offer an increased royalty rate if you feel like it's worthwhile in terms of an extra chance for exposure. So it's worked for me, suggesting to some of our clients that you could increase from, say, usual 50% to maybe 60 or even 70 in a mix. So as part of your offer, you could consider requiring or asking nicely when someone is having a release on the label to include an archive access mix. Even if you're not with Proton, it's a really great strategy to consider for any label. So labels like Katamuka, for example, are doing mixes like this with just their own catalogue at the moment. So on each release, you could review the popularity scores of the artist. As Jason mentioned, in Proton, the scores are clearly displayed for every subscriber in our promo pools. Before the release date, you can develop a strong reusable message with good incentives inviting bigger artists to make a mix. So that's something that we've been refining over time for our own guest mix reach outs that's become really successful. So making a compelling invitation that outlines real value gets real results. Also, on release day, it can be really powerful to notify the artists featured in the mix to help leverage your network and reach a wider audience. So as a pro tip, paying attention to which DJs are in your promo pool are leaving feedback with high popularity scores and inviting them to collaborate can be really powerful, either for releases like remixes or originals or just for DJ mixes to go with their own releases. So from here, I'll hand over to Michael to introduce us to label channels.
Thank you, Gavin. So label channels is something we've been beta testing with some of our top labels, which is now available to all labels powered by Proton. With a channel, a music label establishes a more official presence on Spotify that can actually gain monthly listeners, just like artists. Channels are where mixes released by the label go, and it's essentially an artist profile on Spotify for the label, where their mixes can easily be found and followed. So here are some facts about Spotify label channels. Unlike user profiles, channels generate monthly listeners. Playlists can also be featured on the channel. I will show you what that looks like in a second. Fans of the channels see mixes in new release radar. And these channels have actually generated tens of thousands of extra paid streams for labels and artists. So let's take a look at an example. Here you can see the label channel of Art Vibes, a label at Proton that is inviting their artists to do mixes which are both featured on the artist profile and the label profile. As you can see, the label is able to generate close to 40,000 additional streams per month through their channel, which helps their artists get exposure and increases chances of getting featured in Spotify's official playlists or editorial playlists. Additionally, the playlists from the label's user profile can be featured on the label channel as well, which you can see here in the section Artist Playlists at the bottom. So now let's take a look at an actual mix. In this example, the artist duo Try Lucid had an upcoming release on the label UV, and they got invited to do a mix on the UV label channel on Spotify. The mix then helped grow the monthly listeners for the UV label channel significantly because, as Jason explained, Try Lucid actually have a high popularity score. On the track level, on the right side, you can see how the mix is actually generating tens of thousands of extra streams for the label and for the artists on the mix. So how can labels strategically choose artists that will help them grow their channel on Spotify? As Jason previously explained, labels at Proton can see the popularity scores of their entire artist and promo pool roster to help strategize on who to invite next to do a mix. And per Gavin's examples, releasing mixes can actually be part of the actual release process for an EP or an album or a single. And by using our tools, or Proton's tools, the label can actually grow a following of its own on Spotify. And here in the example, you can see Soul Selectors and their promo pool, where they can actually see the popularity scores of the artists that they have invited to their promo pool. So that was actually a lot, but we wanted to cover everything for you, and we hope you enjoyed it. And we have an extra 10 to 15 minutes to answer any questions you might have. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Good question. This is one of the most common questions that we have. A lot of Proton systems right now are built around the artists that are involved on these labels to begin with, and the DJs that are getting invited to the promo pool. So if you're a DJ that is not in the ecosystem yet, or you haven't received one of these invites yet, you can either get in touch with us and share the genre that you're in, and we can potentially try to connect you with some labels that are in your style and at your level perhaps. But one of the best things is if you follow us on Facebook or our playlists on Spotify, you'll start to see some of the labels that we're featuring, and you can potentially reach out to them or find ones that you like. But that is one of the bigger challenges that we're going to be faced with as we move forward. We want to make it easier for DJs that are not in the ecosystem to get involved, but even just getting our own labels and artists able to do this easily has been a big challenge. And a lot of the stuff that we're building is for that right now.
Any other questions?
Yeah. Oh, sure. Do you want to?
Yeah, so a promo pool is basically, there's other companies that do it, like InFlight or Fat Drop, which you might have heard of. It's basically a way of getting your music to DJs and artists or radio stations before the release. So you send it out as a free copy to them so that you can get feedback, which you can share with the artists on the release, and the DJ start supporting the tracks early before the release date, you know? Did that answer the question? Okay. Yeah, Chris?
I know you're a DJ yourself and you have uploaded mixes. Do you have a tip when I mix specifically for Spotify, what I have to have in mind when I do the transitions, for example, so that it's not so hard to do the technical part in the end? So any tips while mixing? Do you want to get
It's pretty similar to doing any mix, I guess, in a way. We've had some complex mixes where DJs have used like 40 tracks in an hour, and we have a guy who slices the mixes, and sometimes he's pulling his hair out trying to work out where the mix points are. But in general, you just if you make the mix and just make the transitions as close as you can to where you hear the track crossing over, it should be fine. Yeah.
Now it's the tricky one. How about 4 decks?
Four decks, yeah.
How does that work? If I use 4 decks, like, is it?
Yes, good question.
You mean putting the tracks over each other, or
Looping?
Let's say I have 2 loops going on 2 decks, and then I do the transition of 2 tracks on the other.
So I think what some DJs have done is like have a background loop, which is just percussion or something, or an intro from another track. But if there's actually 2 elements from 2 tracks overlapping, I think that makes it difficult to assign the track and also to assign the royalties in our system, because we're doing all the accounting automatically.
Yeah, we've gotten a little creative on some of these. We haven't had too many cases where there are like 2 songs playing at the same time completely for the full length of the track. So because all of the royalties are handled here automatically, and if someone listens to the whole mix and you get the same amount of money per stream, as long as we slice it up so that the track has some presence there and the track list, everyone's going to get a fair share of the royalties. I think what we've done in one case where literally the 2 tracks were just fully on top of each other for the whole mix, which is great. Like as a listener, that's really a joy, is I think we like put both artists and tracks, like we combined one track into 2 and we're like this artist and this artist verse this one, and all the royalties were there, but that's still a challenge, and we're sort of working around the limitations of Spotify's platform in that case. But so far, we haven't really had any issues. We're seeing how it goes as it unfolds. Yeah.
Any other questions?
Yeah.
Hi. You talked about working with labels. Is there any, generally speaking, with Proton, do you work directly with artists, or does that artist need to be at a level where they're working with a label or lots of releases?
That's a good question. We have a lot of artists. If you are an artist that want to get on this platform with your own tracks, we can distribute you as a label. So in order to get onto DJ shops, you effectively have to start a label, even if it's just yourself as an artist. And we have a lot of artists on our platform that do that. And then a lot of times that account starts to blossom into a label, because if you have a collaborator that you remix with, or you have some featured artists, very quickly you start to have collaborations. So we do work with artists in that way.
Thank you.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. Thank you, guys.
Thank you,
Thanks very
everyone.
much.